to be in person, but alas, the weather conspired against us yet again. So I hope everybody is toasty and warm, even though it appears that the roads actually seem to be kind of okay. So I will just be happy we erred on the side of caution instead of having some of us stuck on the side of the road or whatever else. Do we have any citizens' comments?
We have no citizens' comments this month, Madam Chair.
Okay, then we will move on to, do we have any remarks from any of our board of directors?
I would just like to say that I am very excited about the upcoming PLA conference that I am being graciously allowed to go to. And I will look forward to reporting on it next month.
Excellent, good news. I'm excited that that stuff is starting to come back online and we are getting to resume a wee bit of normalcy. I hope that you find the whole experience beneficial and not just because you get to leave your children at home.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments? All righty. I don't have a lot. I got to meet with some members of the foundation to talk about some kind of upcoming projects and some of the things that we would maybe like to see in ways that we could work together and innovate so that the foundation can continue to help the library with its mission. And that was very interesting. And there were a couple of things that I learned that I didn't know, so got to pass that on to Sean to get some more information. So I look forward to kind of hearing about that, and was just really nice to be able to meet and develop relationships so that we can all work together to foster all of the different ways that we can support the JCL mission. And so that was kind of cool. And that's really about all for me. So I think that we can go ahead and go to the Friends report. Whoever is doing that. Shanta Dickerson.
I'm sorry, Shanta is not here this evening owing to weather, etc. It's Christopher Leach, the Friends liaison, here to report on behalf of the Friends.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board and Commissioner Hanslick and Mr. Casserly. Really pleased to be here to give our brief report. Want to let you know that the Pine Ridge tenant improvements are nearing completion. Pine Ridge is the Friends headquarters. They've been making improvements to their storage facility so that pop-up sales can be hosted at the site. And they're very, very close to making that happen. We may very well see a pop-up sale at the end of March or beginning of April. We'll be advertising in multiple channels, and Friends members, of course, will get first notice. It's a very exciting opportunity to broaden the exposure of our great inventory to the used book buying public. We continue to make strategic planning updates. We're going to extend the life of our current strategic plan owing to the COVID lapse in activities. We find that our goals are still relevant and our tactics are still yielding good results. So the committees are revisiting that work. We do like to remind that we aren't only a group of nice volunteers who rifle through boxes of used books. We have a really great board made of volunteers of diverse professional backgrounds. We have 2 new board members, a wonderful experienced employment law attorney and a very seasoned accountant have joined our board, and they're bringing their professional skills and experiences to the work that we do to support the library that we love. Our strategic plan goals this year will high level focus on membership growth and revenue growth so that we can continue to support the library. Our president is seeking time with the JCL and Foundation board chairs to ensure that we too are all and each aligning our efforts of support so that we're all working in tandem. We are going to be hosting a brief and very focused membership campaign during National Library Week coming up April 3rd through the 9th, 2022. We'll be doing a limited focus direct mail postcard, a social media campaign, maybe a social media takeover of the library. You never know what's going to happen. So look for great stories about the foundation, the friends, and the volunteers on our websites and in our social media channels. You can get a head start, of course, by starting or renewing your Friends membership now, or making a gift to the Friends on our webpage, friendsofjcl.org. That's all I have to offer, and we'll stand for any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or anything for Christopher? Okay, I think we can go ahead and move on to Miss Stephanie with the foundation.
Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to report on behalf of the foundation. And Bethany, thanks for mentioning the strategy session that you joined with us. The foundation, it's time for a renewal of the strategic plan. And we thought, who better to ask about some priorities than Bethany? So Bethany and Ava Christie, who is the foundation president, and a few of the other board members met, and it was so helpful to start to build again on what our strategic planning is and what some initiatives can be. So thank you, Bethany, for joining us. I'll start off with our by March, we actually know how much money we raised the previous year. And it was just another good year. I didn't know pandemic could be so generous. So the total number of donors was 558 donors. The total dollar amount was $371,142. And we do running years of comparisons, and last year compares very favorably over the last 4 years. So we're impressed and grateful for how library donors continue to give their financial support. We do put all of the donors' names. Most are happy to have us do that, put their names in giving categories on the website. Everybody who gives any amount is on that website, because we want to recognize our amazing donors. So thank you. And I know a lot of you are on that list. So your support in so many ways counts. The next thing is we are excited to be planning the 4th annual event for the 1952 Society and Readers Circle. This is an appreciation event that's a celebration for loyal and longtime donors, friends of the library, and volunteers. The event is by invitation, and it will be at the Central Resource Library, Sunday, April 24th, from 3 until 5. So we're fingers crossed we can be in person once again. We've only been in person once. We were in person in 2019, and we've been virtual for the past 2 years. So we'll see if we can get everybody together. The 1952 Society recognizes planned givers. The Readers Circle recognizes donors who've given cumulatively $10,000 and above. So we have donors who've given $10,000 and so on up till more than $100,000. And it's a nice way to bring people together and let them know how much we appreciate them. We're excited for the program. We have Arthur Muir. He's the oldest American to reach the summit of Mount Everest in May of 2021. He did it last year, and he at age 75. His program is, it's not about the summit, it's about the effort. So we're excited to have Arthur Muir come and speak to our group. Library Lets Loose is all ever present in our world. It will be September 17th, as you know, again, live at the Central Resource Library. We're excited to announce our honorary hosts. Senya and Will Shields. The honorary hosts serve as ambassadors for the library and the event all year, and they lend financial support and fundraising support. And Senya and Will are an amazing couple. They've made a lasting philanthropic imprint on Kansas City ever since Will came to play football for the Kansas City Chiefs in 1993. And he is a Hall of Famer, and his wife is a force to be reckoned with. So we're really thrilled for them agreeing to be the honorary host for Library Let's Loose 2022. That concludes my report. Are there any questions? All right, thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Miss Stephanie. And I just realized I had a fairly spectacular brain blip that since our last meeting, we have in fact opened another branch that Central is reopened and got to do that, which feels like a fairly significant thing to have forgotten to say something about. It was very, very nice to come in on a cold, blustery morning and already see kids playing in the kids section, that the carpet was lava and jumping around, and that there was life back in the building, and seeing the staff spaces come to life as people were moving back in. That, again, just thank you to everybody who participated on that on behalf of the board. And if you have not had a chance to pop in and see it, it is very, very cool and very, very exciting. So I am glad that we can tick another on time and on budget project off, and that we can then start focusing on the Antioch replacement and going with that. So that was all very exciting. So didn't want to forget to say something about that. Now, Commissioner Hanslick, what is going on at county? And of course, what have you been reading?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. There isn't a lot to report from the county, which I'm extraordinarily grateful for. We're a bit in an in-between time. We'll be starting our budget process for 2023 in the next couple months. And as those of you who are homeowners know, our appraisal statements went out this month, and not surprisingly, most everybody's value has gone up, which we knew was going to happen, because there just aren't enough houses in Johnson County for the demand. And so, as anyone who knows simple economics, supply and demand, that supply becomes much more valuable. So we will be considering all of those things as we move into the budget process and consider what we might do in response to those increased values. I did want to mention something I think that's pretty fun, and that is that the Theater in the Park schedule is out. I kind of think of Johnson County Library and Johnson County Parks and Rec as kind of sister agencies. The parks and libraries always consistently are at the top of the Johnson County community satisfaction surveys as two of the most important and valued services in our county. So I kind of think of you as sister departments. But the Theater in the Park, which of course is part of Johnson County Parks and Rec, has their schedule out. And I think it's pretty exciting. Right now, they have a musical drama called Sparkle Tones. I think that starts March 18th. Other shows include Something Rotten, Disney's Descendants, School of Rock, Zombie Prom. I got to see that. That sounds fun. SpongeBob Musical, Always, Patsy Cline, and Seussical. So there's a lot to look forward to with Theater in the Park, and you can check out the schedule on the Theater in the Park website. I also wanted to just follow up with what Stephanie said. I've had the privilege of working with Senya and Will Shields in the past, and they are just an incredible couple. They're incredible individuals, and we are very, very fortunate to have their support and participation in this year's Library Let's Loose. It'll be extra special, I'm sure, because of their involvement. And also, as Bethany said, it was a real pleasure to be part of the Central Resource Library ribbon cutting. It's just wonderful to see that place filled and back to where it should be, with people and with just all the life that happens there. So glad that that's done. And then last but not least, I'm still working on my book, The Great Dissenter. It's a bit of a tome, so it's taken me a while to get through it. So I'm still working on it, but I'm very excited because the next book I'm going to start is a book called Free Water. And it's actually I believe it's a middle school, written for middle school students. But I heard a story about it on NPR, which caused me to immediately go to my library app and order it. And I did get it. And it's the story basically of a little known part of Black history in the United States. And that is that there was a place, part of the Underground Railroad was a place called the Great Dismal Swamp. And enslaved people would use the swamp as a temporary hiding place before they would travel northward by boat to freedom. So this is a fictionalized story about a brother and sister who were in that Great Dismal Swamp hiding out. So look forward to reading that. If there's any questions, glad to take those. Okay, if not, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we now moving into reports. So board council.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And Bethany asked that we talk about two issues. The first that I'm going to discuss is the library board's statutory responsibility to employ a county librarian. There are two statutes that give to the library board absolute authority to act. The first is in the acquisition of library materials. That is purely a function of the library board and library staff. The second is in the employment of a county librarian. And I'm going to read to you from KSA 12-1225B, subsection A5. In addition to the powers and duties prescribed by KSA 12-1225 and amendments thereto, in Johnson County, the library board shall employ and terminate the employment of a county librarian. So it is by statute directed to you to determine who the county librarian is going to be, to set the procedures for selection and to ultimately make that selection, and that is by statute. And so I wanted to report on that. The second issue on which she asked me to report is on the Kansas Open Meetings Act. And I think this is a really good time to talk about that as you launch into your discussion about the next county librarian. Let me just say that in recent years, some of the problems that have arisen are in the area of serial communications. In other words, where board members or city council members or whatever body it is start communicating with one another by emails on matters that are going to be before the board. And pretty soon a majority has done that. And that's arguably a violation of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. What I would counsel is simply when on matters that are before the board, do not communicate with one another about that. If you need to communicate, for instance, on matters pertaining here to the selection of the county librarian, I would communicate through Patty and through the chair, and then through the chair. And that way, don't start communicating with one another on this, because that can, it leads to, and sometimes they're just totally innocent. It can lead to inadvertent problems under the Kansas Open Meetings Act. Would also recommend during this time to not send emails to one another. There have been several cases that have involved what would be called serial communications through email. And you hit that magic quorum number of 4, and all of a sudden you have an inadvertent, arguably inadvertent, violation of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. So I just think this is a good time to have had this review. Let me see if there are any questions about either item. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Logan. Sean, it's time for the county librarian report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to invite David Vratney, Financial Director, to give the financial report, and then to be followed by Adam Wathen, the Associate Director for System-Wide Services, to give us an update on our statistics. And I think this month we're focusing on trends in collection, and Lacey Griffin is going to be giving that presentation following Adam. So David, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thanks, Sean. Good afternoon, board. Going to cover give you a financial update. Page 8 of your March board report has the January 2022 numbers. So it's going to show you how much revenue we had received by the end of January 31st of 2022. And as of the end of January 2022, we had received $22,149,189, which is around 50% of the $43.8 million that we anticipate or planning to receive for 2022. This is on course. I'm going back and looking at the last 5 years. We typically are right around the 49 to 50% revenue received by this point in time. And a lot of that is due to the ad valorem revenues we receive. We receive a little more than half of our ad valorem at the beginning of the year. So, and in the last couple of years, it's been around 55 to 56%. So, and then from expenses to date, and this, well, we're about 8% of the way through the year as of the end of January, and had about 12% of our budget encumbered. And that too is kind of on track with what we do. The actuals are much less than the 12%, but we enter into encumbrances for our collections at the beginning of the year with some purchase orders and that sort of thing. So it's in our intent to spend that money on collections that ends up giving that 12% number, which is a little bit higher than where you would see us. So from an actual spend standpoint, we're under 8%. So with that, I'll stand for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Let's move on to Adam. If you give the statistical report for this month.
Sure. Thank you very much, Sean. I'm Adam Wathen. I'm the Associate Director for System-Wide Services, and I'm bringing you the monthly statistical report, and then I'll hand it off to Lacey Griffin, who is our Collection Development Manager, to give you some information about our collection. In this month's statistical report, we have January information from 2022, and you will see in our 3-year physical circulation trend that the dot on the far left there, it represents January of 2022, and it's patterning right after 2021 for our physical circulation, and then the dot in the digital usage is pretty close to the 2021 January digital usage, just slightly underneath. And then on our next slide, we show that our visitation trend is exceeding our 2021 numbers in the blue there. And you can see that that over the last year has been patterning underneath the 2019 numbers as we recover from our COVID closures. And I hope to see that trend continue patterning upward toward the 2019 base that we see there on the very top. Are there any questions for me on the basic monthly statistics before I turn it over to Lacey Griffin? Okay. Lacey, go ahead.
All right, thank you, everybody. I am sorry if you cannot see me. My camera says that it's on, and I may just be speaking from the void at this point, so that's all right. Hi, I'm Lacey Griffin, the Collection Development Manager. Today, we'll be looking at the updated collection statistics that now include 2021. On this first slide, you will see the graph for the 10-year collection expenditures. This shows our total expenditure on collection over the last 10 years, including purchases made on digital and physical materials, as well as processing costs. You can see that there is a spike in our expenditure in 2018. This accounts for the addition of the Monticello Library and its opening collection. We received an additional $1 million to purchase new materials for Monticello, and that money was spent over 3 years. Between 2016, 17, and with the bulk of it being spent in 2018. Last year, we reached a budget of $3.8 million as we received an increase in our operating budget for digital products, an increase in the money from the Friends of the Library payment on our weeded materials, and from the Library Foundation for its yearly endowment. On this slide, you will see two graphs. The first one depicts our total physical collection, which includes items such as, but not limited to, physical books, DVDs, CDs, and video games. In this graph, you will see the number of items in our collection remained fairly stable, about 1.1 million items from 2012 to 2016. There's an increase in materials in 2017 and 18 as we grew our collection to accommodate the new Monticello Library, expanding our system to 14 branches. Over the last 2 years, you will see a decrease as we have shifted some of our holdings to digital resources and dramatically increased our digital offerings as a result of the pandemic. In the second graph, you will see the number of physical books added, the blue line, and the amount of physical books weeded, the orange line, over the past 10 years. You can follow the blue line's rise as we focused on physical book purchasing with the opening of the Monticello branch, and then see the line drop over the last 2 years as we moved our attention to the digital collection. As you follow the orange line, you will see that we began to implement a new weeding practice around 2014 that began to normalize weeding materials, weeding about 100,000 to 150,000 a year, with a spike in 2018. After Monticello's opening, we increased our weeding to rebalance the collection system-wide. By 2019, we have returned to a stable weeding that kind of mirrors 2015. There's a small uptick last year as we used Central Resource Center's closure to assess physical reference collections in light of digital access. Next slide. In the first graph on this slide, you will see the total digital content use of the last 5 years and its steady rise with a spike in 2020. While we did move down from the dramatic spike in 2020, our usage in 2021 is still significantly higher than pre-pandemic use. Digital content includes formats such as ebooks, e-audiobooks, e-magazines, databases, streaming video, and e-learning software. To keep up with the popularity of these materials and the usage during the pandemic, in 2020, we actually increased our e-content spending by 26%. The second graph, total ebook and school ebook use, shows a steady increase in both the circulation of ebooks from our patrons and also through the checkouts of our partnership with neighboring school districts. Johnson County Library created a project called the Community Share Program back in 2016. This program allowed schools to choose titles to display as available on their own library media websites. Students can check out available public library ebook and e-audio materials through their school devices and logins. Since 2016, this program has grown to include Shawnee Mission, Blue Valley, DeSoto, Spring Hill, and Olathe school districts. In 2021, the Community Share program accounted for 8% of our total ebook circulation. Next slide. On this graph, holds and circulation, you will see how many holds were filled each year in comparison to how many items we circulated or checked out. Over the last 6 years, holds account for around 25% of total circulation of the system. Surprisingly, this did not change over the pandemic and stayed within this expected rate. Next slide. One thing that did change was which of our locations served the most holds. Comparing 2019 holds to 2021, you can see that Central moved from 2nd place to 7th place in total hold count. This makes sense since Central services were reduced for the Central building upgrade for almost all of 2021. What is surprising is that the increase of hold requests at Leawood Pioneer Library. Leawood moved from filling only 5% of the library system holds to 11% in 2021. Leawood was also our pilot branch for the new curbside holds pickup model, and this may have attributed to some of this increase. All right, do you have any questions for Adam or me?
I actually have a question, and I honestly don't know if this is collection or more of a budget question. Are you guys seeing an inflationary rise on the cost of books and stuff right now? I mean, I know that we're starting to see record high inflation, and I was just curious if you're seeing that in materials yet, or if it hasn't quite hit that sector.
Yeah, so it's definitely hit that sector. The biggest increase has probably been on shipping costs. Books are heavy, they cost a little bit to ship. But then we've also seen inflation in glue, which is really interesting. That's, a lot of books are glued together, and then also in paper. So it's been not as dramatic as in other places, but we've definitely seen it on the books themselves and mostly in the shipping.
Okay, so that's something that we'll probably need to take into account for the next budget cycle in terms of to maintain the collection at its current level. That might need more gold,
Yes.
like everything else. Okay, anybody else have any questions for either Adam or Lacey?
Well,
This is Commissioner Hanslick. This is Commissioner Hanslick. I just wanted to make a comment. I am always so impressed with the collection that we have through the Johnson County Library. As I mentioned, this book, I heard it on the radio, brand new book, copyright 2022. I immediately went to the app, and of course, Johnson County Library already has it available. So I just want to say thank you. To me, it's magical how that happens. I don't know how you do it, but even this other book I've been reading, The Great Dissenter, it was 2021, and I wasn't sure if the library would have it, but of course you did. So thank you to all the people that make sure that we have the right books at the right time and stay ahead of what's new. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll make sure to take that back to the team. They're a great team, and they work really hard to make sure that happens. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the kind words, Commissioner. We have just really great selectors, and they've got their pulse on what people want to read. So I'm always thrilled to hear those stories when people are looking for a book and they find it in a library, especially when they think we probably don't have it yet. I'm often surprised books I want to read, and I'm like, I wonder if we've got this, and Sure enough, we do. So I'd like to invite Scott Syme to give us an update on the on the comprehensive library master plan, but starting off with the central staff space consolidation plan.
Thanks, Sean. Good afternoon, everybody. Scott Syme, project coordinator for the library, and I'll give you this update on the central project on behalf of the core team. Next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit about where we're at with moving in, give some next steps, a timeline, and then I've got a couple of photos for you. As Bethany mentioned, since the last board meeting, we've returned Central to full service. We had a smooth ribbon cutting event led by a couple of our great staff, Alyssa, Andre, and Joseph Keene. Our phase 1 staff are back in the building. Our phase 2 staff are in process, and then we've got one more phase after that. Let's see. Yeah, okay, next slide. Oh, this is perfect. Next steps is where I want to be. Go back one. Phase 2, we're working on moving those folks back in. We're anticipating phase 3 folks. The last bit of our departments will move back in April. And then just how we do these projects is we, for about a year after we open, we have what we call post-occupancy meetings. And that's a time where the managers from those departments can hear from their staff about how well things are working or anything that needs to be tweaked, and we can talk about those kinds of things. So just one of those best practices things. Next slide, please. Here we are at the end of our green bar timeline, back open for full service. We have a warranty on most aspects of the building. For some building systems, we have longer warranties or service agreements. And then maybe one more thing before I move on to photos. This is the last CBU2 update that I'll be giving, and I want to take a minute just to give a big thank you to Abby Mincannon. She's our project manager. To our CBU2, that's what we've been calling it for shorthand, CBU2 project team leads and their teams for really a multi-year time and brain investment to getting this thing done. The staff that ran Little Central for a year, all the other folks who would normally be working out of Central, and then lastly, a thank you to the admin team, the library board, and the Board of County Commissioners for your support of the project. Okay, now I'll go to photos. Next slide. So just a couple of things here. You get to see the ribbon cutting event and then some kids in the kid space. And next slide. Yeah, just a few more of the kid space. These are some library staff, kid celebrities here. So I just wanted to show those guys too. And that is it for the Central update. Any questions on Central before I move us on to Antioch? Okay. For Antioch this month, we've got 2 guest stars. So I won't be giving a normal Antioch report. I will hand it over to Dan McGinn and Tara Bray from Dake Wells to give us a design update. And then after that, we'll hear from Brad Reinhart to give us a refresher on what the public art process is. So I'll hand it over to Dan and Tara.
Thanks, Scott. Can you all hear? Good. Let's see. Last time I reported on what I was reading, I'm reading the Odd Thomas series of novels by Dean Koontz. And I don't know if that's cool or not. I have a feeling it might not be very cool to be reading those, but I really like them. So it reminds me of Edgar Allan Poe. So it kind of struck me. Anyway, thanks a lot for the opportunity. You can go ahead and hit the next slide. Give a schematic design update today, and kind of wanted to start off with this slide. We love thinking about the library as a collection of spaces and even spaces, collection of books. But first and foremost, it's a collection of people, different ages, different backgrounds, all with different needs, and we're trying our hardest to keep people in mind as we design the Antioch Library. So just wanted to include that slide because we actually include it in our own working meetings to just remember that it's a lot of different people that will be taking advantage of this building. Next slide. This is just a quick summary of our task at hand, focusing on a 15,000 square foot single story library that's intuitively convenient, functionally driven, budget maximizing, sustainable ×3, meaning it's resource efficient, but also really focused on well-being for both patrons and staff, and also sustainable in the fact that it's going to be really welcoming to a diverse audience and really interested in inclusivity. The site is adjacent to a single-story building in the community center, and then also the single-story garage. Also a large retaining wall to the east and the sloped area to the south. So it's a really unique site that we paid close attention to, and that ended up really strongly informing a really exciting design concept that we'll talk to you about today. And Tara's going to talk a little bit about the project, and then we're going to just kind of chime in and talk over each other a little bit, but that's kind of what we do. Tara.
That's right. Thanks, Dan. So if you go to the next slide here, we'll talk a bit about the floor plan. We've been working very closely with the core team and with library staff to develop an efficient and flexible plan. Patrons will first be greeted by a welcoming covered outdoor space, which we have been calling the front porch, before entering into the front doors of the library, which are indicated here with that blue arrow. Once inside, visitors will have access to large and small meeting rooms, computer areas, a variety of seating nestled in the stacks, with some of that seating being tucked away in little window nooks. The back of house staff spaces, which are in that light green color, are designed to maximize staff comfort while maintaining a highly efficient layout. If you go to the next slide. As we started to look at the three-dimensional form of the library, one of our main goals was to be very responsive to the existing language of the community center and the parking deck. One of the first things that we noticed is that the library site is situated on a green space that currently serves more or less as a quad for the campus. If you go to the next one, in addition, it's important to note that this is a unique site and that it's viewed from above in almost any direction that someone will approach the library. And so the roof became a really important piece of this design. And it led to the idea of creating a visual green space on the roof of the library. You can go to the next one. This idea, it responds directly to the unique characteristics presented by the site. This image is taken from Slater Street, where you can see some existing prairie grasses. They're highlighted in that by that white line. If you go to the next one, you'll see that the green roof of the library will become a continuation of the green slope that's found on the south side of the site. And if you go to the next slide, I think Dan's going to talk a little bit about some of the benefits of a green roof.
Yeah, sure. And we were really excited. You know, when we first started designing this project, we didn't kind of come to it with the idea of a green roof. It just sort of developed the more we studied the site, and I've been hanging out there just all the time, different times of day and night and different seasons. And after a while, especially once we went to a single story roof, it just kind of started to make sense, and it actually tied into some of our earliest sketches, even during the interview phase. So I'll just touch a bit on the aesthetic and functional benefits of green roofs. There are two types of green roofs, extensive and intensive. Extensive green roofs have kind of, I don't know if you've seen them, they have these kind of tray systems and just a couple inches of soil and pretty limited plant options like sedums and kind of ground hugging plants. You don't really see them from beyond. Intensive green roofs have between 8 and 12 inches of soil and a lot more variety options of plants. So for the Antioch Library, we're interested in the intensive green roof system, which is kind of shown in these pictures. I have a lot of experience on the image on the right. That's the public art project that I worked on a few years back on the roof of the Cosentino's grocery store downtown and the parking deck there. So that picture is about 50 feet above Main Street. That roof has about 10 inches of soil, and that's more than enough to plant prairie grasses. And in fact, they planted trees on this roof by berming up the soil. We love how the colors of the grasses change through the seasons, how they catch the wind, you know, how they introduce potential habitats for butterflies, and just a lot of kind of well-being related benefits. The next slide talks more about some functional benefits of the green roof. One of the biggest functional benefits is the idea that the roof membrane itself is protected. In this diagram, that's the black coating at the very bottom. It's down below all the soil and insulation, so it doesn't get any UV radiation, which actually is the biggest contributor to roof degradation over time. Doesn't get hail damage, no guys in boots stomping around. So it actually has a really good life cycle. A lot of sustainability benefits. It adds to the roof insulation level. It holds stormwater and reduces impacts to the storm sewer system, reduces energy and resources required to re-roof after, a 20 or 24-year cycle of a typical roof, and also reduces urban heat island effect. There are also a lot of sustainability aspects related to well-being that I kind of touched on before. And then one big thing to note is it's been adopted by the GSA. They've done over 150 projects, and they obviously have a really deep vetting project. And so they've been a vetting system. So they've actually been installing this type of roof since the late 80s and early 90s, and they really believe in it. So we really love the green roof system and the opportunities that it affords for this project. Next slide. And Tara kind of talk a little bit about how the green roof ended up informing the design and really started to introduce ways to bring light into the space.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I'll also add that the green roof in this diagram is really starting to show how by extending outwards and creating these overhangs, it begins to shape some really great public space and pull people into the library. So you'll see it gestures outward at the front entry to welcome people in the front doors. And then it also extends outward to provide a covered area for the drive-through.
And Tara mentioned this earlier, but we're talking about a visual green roof here. It will have access for maintenance, but it's not intended that the public come up onto the green roof. However, as she mentioned, like from the street, from Slater, from the parking deck, from the drive down from IKEA Way, you're going to be looking right out on top of it. So it's a really active, it's got to be one of the most visually attainable green roofs around, just because you're looking down on it so much.
That's right. And then on the
Can I
next,
ask a question?
oh, sure,
Yeah.
go right ahead.
What's the maintenance like then? What will it be like for the staff on the roof, or will there be any?
Well, yeah, you would need to maintain the plant material like you would the plants would be on grade. So typically you would, especially during establishment, you would need to do some weeding, and then once a year you would need to take a pretty industrial scale weed whacker and kind of knock down the grasses.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
So as a follow-up to Kelly's question, this is Mitra. Who would be responsible for doing that? Would that be facilities or groundskeeping? And whose budget would that fall in?
I don't know if would someone from the library want to possibly handle that. We've talked to we've introduced this project also to the city of Miriam and gotten really great feedback from them with regard to the overall vision of it. And I think there's been some conversations about with this project occurring kind of on the Miriam site, some discussions about maintenance of the grounds, which would also include this maintenance of the roof plants.
Yep. So to answer Mitra's question, that we have a couple of options. We could hire an independent company to come and manage that. And again, remember with the forms that Tara or Dan is going to be showing, we have easy access to the roof because one of the structures is actually where the mechanical systems are going to be. The other option is we could form a partnership with the city, and the city's park and rec department could manage that and manage the green, very similar to the arrangement that we have with the city of Lenexa, and we could just fold it into the maintenance agreement that we have on the parking structure, and that could be that piece. And then the third option is we could work with county facilities and have them do the maintenance of that. that's probably the least likely option we would go with. But again, we're talking about fairly low maintenance sustainable plants that you may have to go up once or twice a year and maintain that. When you think about the building is roughly about 15,000 square feet, the cost savings, because we're doubling the life of the roof, the cost to re-roof or keep the roof up to date over 40 years is probably going to be much greater than the sustainability of that. The other piece is, Dan hasn't talked about, but these green roofs have been around. This technology is vastly improved from the green roofs that maybe were 40 years ago or even 20 years ago. Just the fact that you have different layers of dirt or soil to maintain that is good. And so the sustainability, I think it would be the first green roof in the county, but Commissioner, you could correct me if that. And I think it's something that the city of Merriam is pretty excited about. But I don't think of it as being a substantial cost for ongoing maintenance.
And Sean, just to add in, we have a contract with a landscaper for Monticello. So that's the other place that you all might have seen a green roof in the last couple years.
Yeah, those are great questions. And we'll have definitely more time to keep talking. As you'll see here, we're going to affect the green roof that you're seeing with some pretty interesting features to bring light into the building. That also reduces the square footage of the planted material too. So.
Yep, and I know we're a little tight on time here, so maybe we could go to the next slide and we could start to show you some of those volumes and how they'll begin to take shape. But first, before we do that, we'll just talk for a brief moment about the parking deck and the community center and some of the language that's present on the campus, which is both of those buildings are single-story buildings that have these elements highlighted in orange that kind of project upwards. And if you click through the next two slides, you'll see a little bit of a different view there. Exactly, yep. So there's that single-story datum with those volumes projecting upwards. And if you go to the next one, the design of the library begins to respond to this language that's present on campus through the use of these light catchers, these light monitors that begin to shape and sculpt light deep into the building. Sean Casserly mentioned this briefly, but one of these shapes is actually the mechanical penthouse, which is seamlessly integrated into the overall design and will provide access to that green roof. We also might quickly mention that the mechanical system is still being ironed out, but we are pursuing an all-electric system for this library branch. The next couple slides talk about how these light monitors are designed to shape and sculpt light in different ways throughout the day, which provides a really beautiful and unique experience for patrons, where the time that you come to the library, the lighting will just be a little bit different every time you come. And there becomes this activation from day to night as these light catchers shift from capturing light to then emitting light outward into the community.
And I would just add too, I know we're trying to go quickly, but the actual shapes and the orientation of the glazing and thinking about how the sun enters, that all comes from some inside out thinking, really trying to think what the different experiences are in the library, and then how can those benefit from light at different times of the day, and then this idea of increased volume over those special experiences. So yeah, it's really shaping, this building is kind of shaped equally from outside in and inside out.
That's right. And then the next slide, we'll just touch briefly on this, but one of the beautiful opportunities with this idea is we all know, living in this region, how dynamic the sky is. If you go to the next slide, you'll start to see how these light monitors begin to shape portions of that sky and really highlight it almost as a piece of artwork from the inside of the library. And you'll see in this really early building section that was sketched out, it just captures the idea of how the interior space might start to be shaped by these volumes. And the next one, we've got a couple of preliminary interior reviews to talk about. As you'll see, they're white models. There's no materials that are currently shown. We've just started to have some initial conversations around the interior material palette. But one thing I will mention is that you'll see on the exterior views once we get there that we're thinking about having this really warm wood soffit underneath the exterior overhangs, and looking at an opportunity for there to be a wood ceiling kind of connects with that exterior wood soffit on the interior. Looking at really warm and neutral color palette. So that way we can really let the books and the beautiful colors that come with the spines of those books be a real focal point of the interior of the library.
We had really good public interaction too, and that word of just the idea of warm space came up time and again from the public, so that we really tried to pay attention to that. And introducing the wood elements, like Tara mentioned, is one way to achieve that, along with the daylight and natural materials.
Exactly. So this view, you're actually standing underneath one of those light volumes. And if you go to the next slide, it's a view standing underneath another one of those. So you'll see the lower portions of ceiling, and then you get these kind of surprising moments as you're browsing through the stacks where the ceiling and the roof just opens up above you. And go to the next one. I think now we're going to look at some exterior shots, and we can just kind of filter through these. This is a view looking from Slater Street. This is one from the courtyard of the community center. We'll have a slide here next that talks a little bit about exterior materials. These materials are still being explored. We've got a couple of options, one of them being what you see on the screen here, which is a heat treated wood. It's a process, a natural process of kind of removing the organic material from that wood so it becomes highly durable and long lasting as an exterior material for the library. And we're looking at an opportunity to kind of contrast that with, as I mentioned, some warm wood underneath the soffit and on the interior ceiling of the library. And then knowing that the green roof is going to be a very present material on the exterior, responding to those natural materials as well. And keep going through these renderings. Again, looking at the front entry of the library. This is one from the back of the site, the south portion of the site, where you can see the drive-through, kind of get a view of how the green roof might appear as you're approaching the site from that angle.
As you can, I'll just chime in again. You can tell we kind of canted the both the pedestrian and vehicular kind of entrance points again as a welcoming gesture. Tried really hard to pay attention to our diversity and equity consultant Stephen E. Smith, who talked about just try your very hardest to make it so that it's impossible, make it irresistible, make it so that if you approach the building, before you know it, you're almost in, and at that point you truly feel like, well, I'm truly invited to go all the way in. So that's one of the reasons we have such distinctive kind of front porch elements in the drive-through on the other side as well.
That's right. And these images, these are the same images we looked at before, but they're looking at a different material. These renderings are looking at terracotta, which is another option that's currently being explored, looking at an option that responds to the color of the community center and the parking deck.
Got really good feedback from the city of Miriam. We had no idea what their take was going to be, if they expected it to look exactly like the existing buildings. They really liked both material options. They liked the forms. And one of the things just to note too is on the sustainability front, aside from the green roof kind of really extending the life of that membrane, the heat treated wood, we can get up to a 50-year warranty on that. The terracotta, most of those systems come up to a like 50 to 75-year warranty on that. So we're trying to think long-term solutions for the library here.
That's right. And this is actually our last image. So I think at this point, Dan, unless you have anything else to add, we could open it up for questions from the group.
Be happy to answer questions and get feedback.
Bethany Griffith, the first thing that, I like the idea of the innovation and the grass and stuff. Would we be consulting with, I guess, maybe more of an environmental specialist about the planting to make sure that if we're going to do this green roof, it's not just a lawn to mow, but that we're actually creating a diverse
Yeah.
ecology for birds. And we've got all kinds of native wildflowers that would be really beautiful up there,
That's a
and
great-
will very
that's-
likely seed themselves up there anyway, given the wind.
That's a great question. Yeah, we have Confluence and Matt Evett, talented landscape architect, that when we started talking about it, we have specific scope for green roof design. So he is just itching to give us both more of a, kind of monoculture, just grasses kind of solutions, all the way to what you're talking about with kind of swaths of grasses, but also native wildflowers. And what he talks about a lot is like interest throughout the year. Like it could be great during the spring, but also summer, fall. And that also turns into, in a library, it's its own little thing to study. And you could imagine almost having classes from the parking deck or the slope looking down as to what's happening season to season. So that's a really great question.
And then Patty, can you go back to the kind of interior layout? It was one of the very early slides.
The plan?
Yeah. With that, my only concern is what the thinking about having the holds so deep in the library instead of by the front porch. Because based on what it looks like, the pink of the holds, that's quite a trek from the entry lobby all the way through the stacks.
We talked about this, and yeah, if anyone else wants to chime over me, please do. Talked about that quite a bit, and the thought was, if in this tight square footage, we really have room for one holds area. So we wanted it to be close to the drive-through, which it is, but then also as you come in and hit the main service point, having a direct line back to the holds and returns area. And by placing it there, it's very close to the back of the house. And so that's kind of where we wound up based on staff recommendations.
Yeah, and I will, this is part of the constraints that we have with making this a 15,000 square foot building. We had originally, and Dake-Wells had done really great work with looking at putting the holds right at the front of the building. And when we got to think of it logistically with the drive-through, that didn't work. And we thought about, okay, we can have two places like we do at Central, but the building isn't really large enough. So then we started talking a little about, well, actually, how far is that to, how far is someone going to have to walk into the building? And because it's a much smaller building, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, it's about 40 feet, I think, from door to holds, but it's also the same time where you're doing a drop off, which are your returns. So we thought that the adjacency between the returns and the holds made the most sense, but it was always a matter of compromise. And we just did not have enough square footage to do everything that we wanted. And that was something that we had to compromise on. Normally, we don't like to put the milk at the back of the grocery store. We like to put the milk, the holds right at front. But with this, with a one story on this campus, it did not make sense for us. And I think Dan and Tara and the whole team from Dake-Wells listened to us and then came back. And I think this solution, not ideal for holds, but the entire system of how the library works, sight lines, meeting room spaces. This is the compromise that we had to make on it.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, thank you very much.
Hey, Bethany, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this will allow, at other libraries, you have to either select hold or pickup. But this way, you never have to do that. You're just selecting a hold.
Right.
And if you decide at the last minute, oh, I was planning on going in and picking up some books, but now I've got this sleeping baby that I don't want to wake up, you can just do it without changing your preferences.
Yeah,
Correct?
yeah, that's really at Central. You have to actually pick up because we can't we couldn't situate the holds in a way that we could both place them that were close to the front door and close to the drive-through. So that was the challenge there. But in this situation, we're able to do it without forcing the staff to leave the drive-through and kind of, run a distance to get the book and come back. So that's a good point, Dave.
And I would think it's not that big a deal to walk back there. And if I really don't want to walk very far, then I'll just do the drive-through.
Yeah. That's ultimately what we kind of said. If you're not, and if you have mobility issues or you just don't feel like walking, the drive-through is always an option for you. And this way, we think convenience, we can get that book off the shelf and get it to you in your car really quickly.
And I could just add, this doesn't have to do with the distance back there, but we did, one of those monitors happens to have, a little aha moment right above the holds area, so that it kind of gives you this little reward for picking up your book. You're right underneath this really great view to get some natural daylight. So it's just a little bonus that is kind of in the spirit of the rest of the building.
Yeah, and Dan and the facilities team, and I think Abby, she's not on the call, worked on creating a really simple pathway through the blue area, through the green, and just straight to the holds to pick that up. So we think with signage and clear pathways, there's going to be no ambiguity or confusion for patrons when they come, and they'll clearly be able to see where the holds are and be able to access them as well as the returns. Before I move on, is there any other questions or concerns with this building? Since we have Tara and Dan here. Oh, hey, great job, guys. Thanks for the presentation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I just want to add one thing. It's so great working for this group. I mean, the positive spirit and enthusiasm for this project, it really makes what Tara and I and the rest of us do a real joy. So I just wanted to thank you.
Thanks, guys. Now I want to invite Brad Reinhart.
Yes.
Oh,
Good
there
afternoon.
you go. Good afternoon, Brad. I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Sean. And thank you to the library board for allowing me to come today to give you an overview of the public art program that we have at Johnson County. And I'll touch on how we go through the art and artist selection process as well. So yeah, I'll start with a quick history background on what the public art program is. There's a slide that'll describe what public art is and the value it brings to the community. I'll spend a bit more time going over our process that we have, and then there's an appendix, and I won't really go through that, but that's available for your reference, and certainly happy to respond to any questions. So this slide here, we'll pause for a second. This is that gives the background and history of the public art program. It was established 15 years ago. It included the formation of the Public Art Commission, which serves in an advisory capacity over the program. It established a 1% for art allocated for new capital building projects, including the renovation of newly acquired properties. The expenditure for public art caps at $500,000 with a minimum of $75,000 for an art project. So you'd have to have a capital building project or renovation project of $7.5 million to be able to meet the $75,000 threshold. And so as stated in the resolution, the purpose for the public art program is to acknowledge that works of art are public improvements and should be a prominent part of the county, and to provide a process for accessioning major works of art in conjunction with capital building projects. Next slide, please. I think it's always helpful to define or describe what public art is. And so this is taken out of the resolution, which established the program back in 2007. And this definition allows for opportunities for diversity within the county's public art collection, with the underlying goals of driving awareness and appreciation for the services provided by Johnson County, developing connections between public buildings and the services provided to the community from those buildings, establish Johnson County's national reputation for public art projects, and provide for the integration of planning and development of both public buildings and public art. So that defines public art and describes the value that it brings to our community. Next slide, please. So the next two slides provide kind of a high-level overview of the art selection program or art selection process. And then there's another slide that goes into a little bit more detail. But at a high level, our goal has been with our recent public art projects that we always want to integrate and coordinate a public art project with the design and construction of a capital building project. So public art is budgeted within each specific capital building project by facilities, and it's a line item in our overall project budget. The design team, including the facilities project manager and the core design team from the other resources from the library as well, administer the artist selection process and ensure that we integrate into the building design. And the benefit of this is that it designed in conjunction with the building design, which gets it in the construction documents, which incorporate the infrastructure that's needed to support the art. Lighting, could be structural supports, if it's a sculpture that's hanging, something like that. And so early on in the program, there were some challenges where the art kind of came later. The building was under construction, it was designed, it was being constructed, and then the art came around, and there were always change orders and maybe some challenges. And it also, I think, resulted in some limitations of what we could do and couldn't do. So we try to get the art integrated in with the design early on, make sure the infrastructure is there in the construction documents. So next slide, please. There's an artist selection panel that's seated that recommends the art to the Public Art Commission. The Public Art Commission in turn recommends approval to the Board of County Commissioners. But the art concept is included in with the design of the building project. And so when we present a building design to the Board of County Commissioners, and certainly that would come to the library board as well, you'll see what the public art piece is that's integrated in with the design of the building. And so then the art is also, the infrastructure needed is included in with the guaranteed maximum price contract from the construction manager. So that's kind of a high level process. I have one slide here that kind of gets into the flow chart, if you will. So sorry if this makes your head hurt, but starting in the upper left corner there.
I just want to say that.
Oh, sure.
It's Bethany's love language is a good flow chart. So thank you for putting that on the presentation, Brad.
Okay, well, good deal. So just kind of starting in the upper left corner, the Board of County Commissioners will approve a capital building project. And for the case of the library, certainly the board will, as you're working through your comprehensive library master plan, you'll approve projects to move forward. The design and construction team, including the project management team within the county, will issue the call for artists. So that's like an RFP, request for a proposal, but it's a call for artists. The Public Art Commission seats an artist selection panel. And then the ASP, the artist selection panel, begins its work. So they'll review the submissions that are received from the art community. They'll shortlist the artists. They'll conduct interviews of the shortlisted, typically 3 to 4, maybe 5 will be shortlisted. And then the concept will be selected. There'll be a recommendation made to the Public Art Commission. The Public Art Commission will recommend the art, and then that'll be incorporated into the design of the building. And then once the Board of County Commissioners approves the project guaranteed maximum price contract, which includes the public art, that's their approval of the public art project. So I'll pause there, and that's really kind of the crux of the presentation this afternoon. I'll pause there for any questions you might have. All right. There is more to the presentation. I won't necessarily go through that, but it's there for your reference, and certainly you can always reach out to me, Sean, and team and the board if you have additional questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Brad, is your last day? I think Brad's last day with the county is it March 18th?
It is a week from tomorrow.
All right. I just want to recognize Brad, and I haven't told him that I was going to do this, but Brad has been with the county for 7 years, and under that 7 years, he has worked with the library on Central Building Project Phase 1, Monticello, Lenexa, Central Building Phase 2, the preliminary designs on Antioch. He has been responsible for the MOU between the two organizations. I just want to say, Brad, in the 7 years he's been with us, has created a culture of collaboration, collegiality, and trust. He has brought a vision to the county about facilities and a new way of working with partners. He has always considered JCL as a partner, not just something that would sit on the side, but someone that was invested. They were as invested in as we were, and he's taken that vision, and it shows with the work that Juan, Sean, and Abby have done with us. I want to say, I know you've also done many other projects such as the courthouse and the coroner's office and all sorts of other types of things. But it's been a pleasure working with you, and it is our loss to see you go, Brad. And I wish you the best with whatever new endeavor and adventure you might be in. I just want to take, on behalf of the library board, you are one of the reasons all these projects have come in on time and on budget, and we have such beautiful buildings. So thank you, Brad.
Well, thank you, Sean, for those kind words. And I struggle to, I guess, accept those that I wanted to contribute positively to the county, but there is such a great team, and the library is a great client, if you will, customer to work for. So I've greatly appreciated the opportunities to be a part of the library and seeing the comprehensive library master plan really start from the beginning and make it to this point. So there's a great facilities team. I'm very appreciative of them. And Sean, you have a great team, and it's always a joy to work with them. So I'll miss everybody. I'm sure I will miss this role. But yeah, I'm just kind of interested in trying some new things and seeing what's next for me. So thank you.
You're going to be great wherever you land.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Fred. Okay, let us move on to Scott. I believe you're going to be giving us a presentation or an update on the DeSoto Spring Hill Edgerton renewal study.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Okay, so up next, we've got DeSoto Spring Hill and Edgerton. Next slide. I'll talk a little bit about staff and public engagement. This is ongoing. We've got paper surveys at each of those 3 locations, as well as an online survey. That online survey closes tomorrow. The last week, we had a live virtual listening session via Library On Demand to hear from community members about what they'd like to see at those 3 libraries. And we've had over 350 responses to the survey so far, which I'm blown away by that turnout. So that's exciting. I'm excited to see what that data looks like. Next slide, please. So once that information has all come in and the survey closes, we'll take a little bit to look through that and look for trends. We'll review all those ideas and input and thoughts with the project team and with administration, and then we'll work with our consultant to bring concept design options and budget estimates back to the board so we can share those with you guys, and we'll be seeking direction on those probably in June of this year. Next slide. And this is just a look at our timeline. I forgot to put the red arrow on this time. Sorry, guys. We're right between Q1 and Q2. Just concluding that engagement phase and just getting ready to start up on the design phase. Any questions about DeSoto, Spring Hill, and Edgerton? Okay, I've got one left, which is just a look at our overall timeline. And I'll ask for the next slide, please. Let's see. So you're seeing the red line where right at the end of Central. So we're just about done with Central. Let's see. And otherwise, not a whole lot of movement on the rest of that slide. Next up is the CRP timeline, which also hasn't changed. Let's see. We're inching forward on CRP stuff. Our first one will be Cedar Row, some work over at Cedar Row. And that work is expected to last about 2 months, but we're not planning to need to close the building or close off service for that whole 2 months. We're thinking probably a week or two. And so the next step with Cedar Row is we would be bringing back a recommendation for closure for that little bit of work that we need to do over there. And that's all I've got for this month. Thank you, guys. Any questions?
Hey, thanks, Scott. Great presentation. Now we're going to move on to the succession planning, which is the third part. So if you remember, the first part, I talked a little about what happens if key stakeholders leave the organization, who takes on those roles and responsibilities. That was in part one. Part two was about leadership and developing people within the organization to grow and creating growth paths. And today we're going to be talking a little about showing the 9-box, which is an industry standard for identifying those, and then what's going to be happening on 2022. So next slide, please. Okay, and next slide. So this is the 9-box model that we look at two things, potential and performance. And if you look at the green boxes in the top right-hand corner, you'll see that these are the kind of criteria that we look at, or someone has to qualify, including one of the gray boxes, which is a foundational contributor. And so looking at these criteria, we are able to determine who, what we call, are at a point in their career to take the next step, whether it is continued leadership in the place that they're at today, and so as subject matter experts, or whether it's they're prepared to take the next step, whether it's into additional management responsibilities or into executive responsibilities. And so next slide, please. So at this point, enhancing the culture of leadership, we originally had the goal of having 12 participants. We've gone and reached out to those. We've had a situation where some of the candidates have recently have just had children. And so they decided if they could put it off a year, that would be great. And so now we have 10 people confirmed at this point that meet the criteria for 9-box. And so the first cohort enables us, or the first group allows us to kind of test and before we finally build a more formal curriculum. The curriculum really is aligning with county's pillars of performance and researched markers of what make kind of a 21st century leader. And then this topic scattered across broad topics. Really, we're looking about government relations, but we're also talking about hard skills, but also soft skills. So next slide, please. So this gives the 5 components, which is, again, leadership development course, which talks about learning objectives, how do you inspire people, navigating change, particularly ambiguity, feedback and learning, how to receive feedback, and then how to change behavior once you've received that. We're also planning a luncheon with Fred and Carol Logan as part of the leadership fund, where the 10 people can kind of have a luncheon, but also kind of talk back to Fred and Carol about what they're learning, but have an interaction with them as a major contributor. And we may think also about bringing in people from the foundation with that. Then I'm going to talk, component 3 is really talking about what does it look like for county leadership? What are the components around strategic planning, leading with values, and then being a steward of public funds, also the devil's in the details, operational issues, relationship and influence. So sometimes you're part of a large group and you don't have the power within that group, but you have the power to always influence. And then maximizing industry resources. Together this year, the group of 10 is going to be reading the book Switch, which talks about how things that you think are naturally intuitive about leadership may not be. And it's really about checking your assumptions, checking what makes common sense, but also then backing that up with data, particularly when managing people. And then what we're doing is monthly leadership reflections. Well, with individuals reading, sending emails, writing, and there's a chance to reflect, because leadership really is a development that happens internally. that prepares you to lead people or processes going forward. So that concludes part 3 of the summary. Are there any questions as we go forward? If there are no questions, that concludes the county librarian report.
All right, thank you very much. The first thing we need to do is the consent agenda and our minutes. So if someone has a motion for that.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
And I need a second, please.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, we do not have any old business, but we do have some new
Bethany, I think
business.
Patty is trying to get
Oh,
you a
I'm sorry.
message.
We need to look at pulling the February 10th minutes from the
Okay.
consent agenda and update a date that was stated at the end of the minutes.
Oh, okay.
Since we've
There.
already approved them, do we need to do something differently?
What was the date discrepancy? What was the problem on that? I did not see that detail. I'm sorry.
The approval of the capital improvement plan from
Mhm.
February, the dates that were stated were 2021 to 2025, and it should have been approving the 2023 to 2027 capital improvement plan. Just
Okay.
So Fred, do we need, since these were already approved with the incorrect information, do we need to do something to?
Yeah, there's a suggested motion that the Library Board of Directors approve the minutes of the February 10, 2022 Library Board meeting as amended to update the dates of the approved 2023, 2027 capital improvement plan.
Okay, thank you very much for that. If somebody could do that for us, please. So we can fix our administrative error.
I move that the Library Board of Directors approve the minutes of the February 10th, 2022 Library Board meeting as amended to update the dates of the approved 2023 to 2027 capital improvement plan.
Okay, now I need a second for that, please.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Okay, does that make your administrative heart happy, Patty? Are we all good?
Yes, thank you much.
Excellent. Okay, we do have an informational item that we don't need to act upon, but we do need to see. Sean, if you'd like to walk us through that.
Yeah, so this is really about the budget. We've met twice in 2021 with the budget committee and the third time in 2021 to evaluate budget related proposals that were made from staff for additional operating funds. What is happening in general is that the revenues are increasing beyond our original prediction, but as we're going through the budget process, we are having to make, the county and the libraries having to make adjustments to that. So what we presented to the committee is accurate, and will probably need no changes as we were looking at roughly a 4 to 5% increase with the budget that we presented. We're just going to have wait and see how the CMO's office and the Board of County Commissioners look at these new facts on assessment. They've just gone out within the last week or so. If there's any changes, we're going to bring them to the library board and step you through that. If there's a need for us to have a fifth meeting to explain them to the budget committee, if it needs that kind of detail, then Dave and I would like to reach out and give an update to that. There's no action with this as we go forward. But this is just purely for information to go, revenues kind of exceed our expectation. Dave, is there anything that I'm missing on this?
No, Sean, I think you hit it on the head there. This is a placeholder number. The number that will come back in April should be higher. We're waiting on some of those March numbers to come in to kind of influence what our final recommendation would be. And depending on what's going on there, we may want to try to loop in the budget committee before we come back in April. But the good news is it's increases, not decreases. So all should be somewhat good news there.
Yep. The bad news is, as everyone knows, is inflation. I mean, it's the highest inflation that we've had. We don't have good numbers yet on how that might impact future capital projects. But again, sales taxes are going up. And so you've looked at a suppressed economy for the last 2 years because of COVID and spending patterns. I think unemployment in the county is like 1.7. Actually, there are more jobs than there are people to fill them in Johnson County. So all these types of things affect the budget, and it remains fairly fluid. So this is an area that we have to deal with ambiguity. We're working with the CMO's office and the budget office. And if there's any large changes, it would be my recommendation to meet with the budget committee so we have the time to go through them and then bring them to the board for approval going forward. Any questions or concerns around this item?
I think it is what it is.
Yeah, I think we're in a very good position financially, and I have total confidence in working with the CMO and the budget office that we can get a budget that the library board, the BOCC, and the CMO and the budget office all are in agreement with. That's my goal working forward. I will move on to the next item if I could, and that's between Catholic Charities and the Board of County, the Library Board. Catholic Charities provides free lunches, and they've done it at Antioch and Central. It's a great partnership. They come in, do the setup. Families are able to eat lunches together. I think it's 5 days at Central and 1 day at Antioch. And I fully support this going forward, but we need a motion from the library board to make it official.
Any questions, comments, or concerns about this partnership? If not, I would take a motion, please.
Brandy Butcher, I move that the Johnson County Library Board of Directors approves the memorandum of understanding with Catholic Charities of Northeast Kansas.
Fantastic. And a second, please. Thank you. And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? This motion carries. Thank you.
The next issue is adopting really the ADA transition plan for physical spaces. The county has worked on this. There is a 2,000-page document, which we decided not to load up to the board portal. If you would like us to load it up to the portal, we can. But essentially what it is looking at is over the next 5 years, we have a plan. The county has a plan, and the library is a part of it. To transition to make everything that we can compliant to ADA regulations. And I am needing a motion for this. It also talks about we will be allocating about $150,000 annually in order to make these changes and updates as needed. And there is some kind of graphics. It's similar things to like the pavement that's running along Farley. And those types of things as we go forward over the next 5 years. But having a plan and being in compliance with ADA is a high priority for this organization.
Okay. Any questions, comments, or concerns about this? Then I would take a motion, please.
I move to approve. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, David.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
I move to approve the library's ADA transition plan for physical spaces.
I'll second.
And all of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries.
The final item is something that you are very familiar with. It's the arc flash at Corinth. We still do not have the pieces and parts to do this upgrade. This has just got to do with supply chain and our struggles and the vendor struggles to get the equipment that they need. So instead of bringing each month a motion, we've thought that we could, if you would consider approving the temporary closure of Corinth for up to 3 days between March of 2022 and December. That allows us the freedom that during this year, hopefully, if we were to receive this part, that we would not have to come back and ask you for another motion, but we would be able to schedule and just have it done. I know this is a little unusual to give such a large window. It's our intent, which is inform the public, give them enough lead time, do it at a time of year where it's going to have the least impact to the patrons in that time frame. And again, ideally, we would not be doing this in the middle of summer when children are off and need access to the library. We would find a time of a holiday weekend or some other time that was really most suited to get this done.
Any questions, comments, or concerns about this, or it is what it is and you'll get it done in the most sensible manner possible?
I think it makes a lot more sense than bringing it back to us every couple months.
Okay, then I would take a motion, please.
This is David. I move to approve the temporary closure of the Corinth Library for up to 3 days between March and December 2022 to complete electrical arc flash work.
Second.
Brandy, second.
And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed?
And
That motion carries.
And that the staff and I thank you from the bottom of our heart on that one. Thank you very much.
Let's just get her done.
Yeah.
Okay, the last thing we have is an executive session to last 30 minutes to discuss matters of non-elected personnel. And so I will need a motion for that. And then Patty, I am guessing you can control the technology that makes that happen. Correct?
So as soon as that motion to recess into that executive session, the board, everyone that's requested into that session will leave this meeting and go to the other Zoom meeting. Everyone else can stay, and this will continue to live stream.
Should we then do 35 minutes so we have a couple of minutes to successfully negotiate the technology transfer? If we want to do 35 minutes, we just, the motion is just for 35 minutes since we actually need to drop out of this and then open another.
I think that's a really smart, that's a really smart idea. It gives people a little time to get from one Zoom virtual meeting to another.
Okay, fantastic. So if I could have a motion for a 35-minute executive session, please.
Randy Butcher, consideration of the approval of Johnson County Library Board of Directors to recess into executive session for a period of 35 minutes.
Need a second, please?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I think you might want to have her read the entire motion.
Sure.
That gives the reason.
Oh, okay. All righty. Okay, I move that pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1, that the Board of Directors of the Johnson County Library recess into executive session for a period of 35 minutes to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel. The subject of the discussion during the executive session will be the employment process for the next county librarian. Those attending the executive session shall include members of the library board, the executive assistant Patty Kangath, and may include at certain times Library Board Counsel Fred Logan and Andrew Logan, and the library's County Human Resources Specialist Tamika House, and other individuals requested by the Library Board. The Library Board will reconvene in this meeting room at, what time is it?
It is 5:39 now.
So what does that make it?
6:14.
6:14, thank you.
That's right.
Second. We still need to do that.
Yep, all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. We will see you back here at, that was 6:14, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so
That's
Tamiko,
it.
we just, I'm sorry, not Tamiko. We just drop out of this one and go into the other one.
What'd you say? I got it.
Correct.
Okay.
David. If you log off this meeting and then you can hop onto the other Zoom link that we sent for the executive session. Oh,
Dave, you're on mute.
there he goes. I think he got
Okay,
it.
he's got it. Okay. Yeah, I saw he was still here, and as I'm walking away, I was like, we still have one board member. So I'm glad. I think if he runs into problems, he can contact Patty and get connected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, I guess let the minutes reflect that we have returned from executive session at 6:13. And we have no other action, so we need a motion to adjourn, please.
I move the library board of directors adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for all of your time and consideration and brain power and everything that you do to make the library work. Thank you very much. And we will see you hopefully in person next time. And I will hear from you, Patty, I guess,